The snow was falling hard on the moon of Ralvax. The sky was gray and the ground was covered in white. It was cold, quiet, and full of danger. The war had just passed through this place. Bodies of both humans and aliens were scattered across the ice. Fire still burned from broken machines. The air smelled like metal and smoke. Corporal Ethan Ward moved slowly through the ruins. His armor was cracked, and his left arm was bleeding. He had lost his unit during the ambush. Now he was alone. His rifle was almost out of charge. His only goal was to survive and find a way back to human space. He heard a soft sound nearby. At first he thought it was the wind, but then it came again, a small cry. He raised his weapon and followed the sound. Behind a pile of metal and snow, he found her. The child was no older than 6. Her skin was pale blue, and her eyes were large and dark. She had small ridges along her cheeks. A Zeller, an alien. She was hiding, her body shaking. One of her arms was burned, and she looked cold and weak. Ethan stared at her, unsure what to do. His orders were clear. The Zeller were the enemy. No survivors. But this was a child. She was not holding a weapon. She was not fighting. She was crying and alone. She looked up at him. Her eyes were full of fear. She reached out a little with her good hand and made a soft noise that sounded like a plea. Ethan lowered his weapon. He wrapped her in his torn jacket and picked her up. She was light and very cold. She pressed her face against his chest. He didn't know why he was doing this. It didn't make sense. But leaving her there felt wrong. He started walking, holding her close. He would need food, heat, and a way off the moon. Oh, the mission had changed. He was no longer just trying to survive. He was protecting someone now. As the snow kept falling, Ethan moved forward through the ruins with the enemy's child in his arms. He didn't know what waited ahead, but he knew one thing for sure. He could not let her die. Ethan pushed forward through the snow, holding the child close to his chest. Her head rested against him. Her skin felt cold, but she was still breathing. The wind was sharp, and the ground was rough, with broken metal and ice. Every step felt heavy, but he could not stop. He remembered the crashed Zeller scout ship not far from here. It was the only chance they had. If it still had power, he could try to fly it. If not, they would both freeze. After an hour, he saw the dark shape of the ship ahead. Part of it was buried in the snow. Smoke rose weakly from its side. Ethan reached the door and forced it open. The inside was dark, but warm enough to stay alive. He laid the girl down on a seat and searched the cockpit. The controls were strange but not impossible. He had trained with some enemy tech in the past. He tapped a few buttons. Lights came on. The engine gave a low sound. It still worked. He turned to the child. She looked at him with calm eyes. Her lips moved as she spoke in her own language. Ethan could not understand, but her voice was soft and steady. She trusted him now. He gave her a small smile. "We're getting out of here." Ethan sat in the pilot's seat and took a deep breath. The ship lifted slowly from the ground, shaking as it rose. The storm outside grew smaller as they flew higher. Behind him, the child stayed quiet, watching him with wide eyes. She was no longer just the enemy. She was someone who needed him. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan had someone to protect. The stolen scout ship moved through space like a shadow. Ethan kept one hand on the controls, eyes focused on the screen. The girl sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket made from his jacket. ... She had stopped shaking. Her eyes followed every light and sound inside the cockpit. She was curious, quiet, and calm. Ethan checked the fuel levels. Not good. The ship would not reach the nearest human station. He needed another plan. There was an old mining outpost on the edge of neutral space. It was far, but still possible. He set the course and leaned back in his seat. The girl spoke again in her alien tongue. Her voice was soft. She reached out and touched a button on the control panel. Ethan gently moved her hand away and smiled. "No touching that little one." She tilted her head and repeated, "Ethan." He nodded. "That's me." They flew for hours in silence. Ethan found a small ration pack and gave her food. She ate slowly, watching him the whole time. When she finished, she leaned against him and closed her eyes. He looked down at her. She was just a child, but her presence felt heavy. Who was she really? Why had she been left behind during a battle? She was not like other Zeller he had seen in the war. She had no hate in her eyes, only fear and wonder. Then the alert beeped. A Zeller warship had entered the system. Ethan's heart jumped. It was scanning all ships in the area. If they got caught, there would be no mercy. He turned off all power except life support. The ship floated in silence. Darkness filled the cockpit. He held the child close as the warship passed by. For 10 long minutes, nothing moved. Then the alert stopped. The warship was gone. Ethan turned the systems back on and let out a breath. The girl opened her eyes and looked at him. They were still safe. But something was clear now. The Zeller were looking for her. And whoever she was important. Too important to leave behind.
Ow.
Too important to let go. Ethan landed the ship on the edge of the old mining outpost. The place was quiet and dark, but the systems still worked. It had food, water, and power. It would be safe for now. He helped the child down from the ship. She looked around with wide eyes. The metal walls and silent halls were new to her. She stayed close to Ethan, never more than a few steps away. Inside the control room, Ethan sent a message to Human Command. He said he had escaped with enemy tech and needed pickup. He did not mention the child. He knew what would happen if he did. As they waited, he learned more about her, showed him small symbols with her hands. She said her name slowly. Leary. It was soft and strange, but it fit her. He pointed to himself. Ethan. She smiled and said, Ethan. 2 days passed. Then the message came. Human Command had received his signal. A ship was on the way, but something else happened first. The outpost lights flickered, the ground shook. A large shadow appeared above. A Zeller capital ship. Ethan grabbed Leary and ran to the monitor. A message was coming through. It was not an attack. It was a direct request. The face of a tall Zeller woman appeared on the screen. Her eyes were sharp, her face calm, but behind her voice was something more. I am Kalitha, she said. You have my daughter. I want her returned. Now. And I want to see the human who saved her. Ethan stood frozen. Leary looked up at the screen and spoke a single word. Mother. Ethan now knew the truth. This child was not just any Zeller. She was the daughter of their leader. Ethan stood in the center of the outpost, holding Leary's hand. The screen still showed Kalitha's face. Her voice was calm, but her words were strong. I do not come to fight, she said. I only want my child. No, I want to see the one who protected her. Ethan did not know what to say. He had seen Zeller leaders before, but none like her. She looked proud, cold, but not cruel. Looked at Leary. She was staring at the screen, eyes full of hope. Outside, the Zeller ship did not fire. It stayed above, waiting. A human ship was also coming. It sent a message, ordering Ethan to hold the child until they arrived. But he knew what that meant. They would take her away and use her. They would not care about her safety. Only about power. He looked at Leary again. She squeezed his hand. Ethan opened the door and stepped outside. Transport pod came down from the Zeller ship. It landed near the outpost. The door opened. Kalitha stepped out. She was tall, with dark armor and silver markings on her face. But her eyes were not on Ethan. They were on Leary. Leary ran to her. Kalitha dropped to her knees and caught her in her arms. The moment was quiet, and she looked up at Ethan. You saved her, she said. You cared for her. Why? Ethan did not speak for a moment. Then he said, because no one else would. Kalitha stood. She looked at him with a new kind of respect. Come with us, she said, not as a prisoner, but as something more. Ethan stared at her. She was not asking for a deal. She was asking for him. Ethan stood still, trying to understand what he had just heard. Kalitha, leader of the Zeller Dominion, was asking him to come with her. Not in chains, not under guard, but with respect in her voice. Her people stood behind her, watching. No one raised a weapon. Leary held her mother's hand but kept looking back at Ethan. Her small face was full of worry. She did not want him to leave her side. She had trusted him, and now she was afraid. Ethan looked up at the sky. The human ship would arrive soon. If he stayed, they would take Leary. They would ask him questions, lock him in a room, and turn this into a weapon. She would not be safe. And neither would he. Litha stepped closer. You did what our own soldiers would not do. You risked your life for my child. That means more to me than you know. Ethan looked into her eyes. They were strong, but not cold. He could see truth in them. What do you want from me? He asked. To be near her, she said. To help her grow. To be her protector if you choose. And maybe to help me understand your kind. Ethan looked at Leary again. She let go of her mother's hand and walked back to him. She hugged his leg without saying a word. He rested a hand on her head. He had never felt like he belonged anywhere in the war. Orders, battles, pain. But this child had looked at him like he mattered, like he was something good. He looked back at Kalitha. If I go, will she be safe? With me, she said, she will always be safe. If you come, so will you. Ethan gave a small nod. I'll go. Kalitha gave a short signal. The Zeller soldiers stepped back. No one moved against him. It was done. Ethan picked up Leary, and she smiled for the first time in days. He had just made a choice that would change everything, not just for him, but for two worlds. The halls of the Zeller capital ship were quiet as Ethan walked beside Kalitha. Leary held his hand, smiling and calm. The other Zeller soldiers watched them with curious eyes. No one spoke against him. No one raised a weapon. He was no longer the enemy. He was something else now. Ethan had been given a room near the royal chambers. It was simple, but warm, with books, light and clean air. Leary came to visit him every day. She brought him drawings and small gifts. They sat together for hours, sometimes in silence, sometimes speaking in broken words, learning from each other. Kalitha met with him often. They talked about the war, about peace, and about trust. She listened to him, and he listened to her. She was not what he had expected. She was strong, but not cruel. She cared for her people, and she loved her daughter more than anything. One evening, as the stars shined outside the ship's windows, Kalitha stood beside him. Things are changing, she said, because of you. Ethan looked at her. I didn't plan this. I just did what I thought was right. And that is why it matters, she said. Later, news spread across both human and Zeller space. The war had paused. Talks had begun. Human had been accepted into the Zeller court, not as a prisoner, but as a guest. As a protector, as family. Many were angry, many were confused, but many others felt hope. Ethan now walked in two worlds. He spoke for peace. He stood for a future where one act of kindness could break years of hate. Leary called him her guardian. Kalitha stood at his side. And in the heart of the stars, something new was born, not war,